Welcome, everyone. I'm Elbrud Jones. This is Men on the Main Line. Well, it is SAT test taking season, and I've got information for you today. If you're going to be taking the test May 7th, make sure you register by April 8th. If you're going to take the SAT June 4th, make sure you register by May 5th. But in between now and then, I want you to prepare yourselves. I want you to get your mind right. I want you to listen to tips we're going to give you today about how to be successful on the test if you're a student who's planning to take the SAT. And if you're a parent of someone taking the SAT, I've got advice for you today about how to be supportive of that student. Today on my show, we have founder and president of Mainline Test Prep, Steve Odabashian. He is a friend of mine. He is an excellent tutor. He is the head tutor at Mainline Test Prep. And Steve, I'm really glad that you are here with me today. I am feeling anxious just talking about this, and I don't have to take the test, and my daughter's already taken the test. But
nice to be here.
Thank you. What is it today? You know, the test has changed over time. What is the SAT, and what's your 60 seconds of test prep advice that you might give to the viewers if they don't watch the entire show, if they just watch the beginning here?
Sure. Well, the test has changed in the last 5 or 6 years, and it is going to change again in the next couple of years to an online version, a shorter version. The math will have calculators allowed throughout, and the reading passages will be really short. But I'd say if, in 30 seconds, the main advice I would give parents and kids is don't only consider the SAT, because the ACT is equally accepted among colleges. So figure out which test is better for you. I don't think there's an easier test. Sometimes people say the ACT is easier. I say it depends. The only way you really know is take a practice in both, compare the scores. I can help you figure out which one is the right test, and then that's where you should put your focus.
And you tutor for both tests, the ACT and the SAT.
Yes.
That's fantastic. Now, I understand that your motto is we don't just teach the tests, we take the tests.
Yes.
So March 12th, you took the test?
Yes, I did.
And you've taken the test repeatedly in the past. How many times have you taken the test?
As an adult, I've probably taken SATs and ACTs 10 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're doing this because you enjoy torturing yourself. You like pain. Why are you taking the test over and over? And how does it help you in your business and in terms of helping students?
Sure. It definitely differentiates me from other tutors in the area, other test prep companies, because I've yet to see another grown man or woman in there taking a test. It allows me to stay current on what they're asking. And then at the end of the test, there's often an experimental section where they're testing future questions. So it's a chance to sort of get a look at what's coming next.
That's awesome.
But it also shows that I'm, in solidarity with my students. Like if they see me in there, they know that I know what I'm talking about. And not only do I know how to teach it, but I can get the questions right too, which I think gives me certainly added credibility.
Absolutely. Now, in terms of upcoming test changes, I understand, as you said, there's going to be an electronic version that's all electronic?
Yes.
And so does that mean that's an option instead of taking the paper, or it will replace possibly
I think it's going to replace it, is what's going to happen within a couple of years. It's not a take-home version, though. It's still you go and it's proctored. You bring, I think, your electronic device, or one will be provided to you.
Okay.
But it's sort of like that's how they do most of the graduate school exams.
Yeah, right. Anyway. That's what I was thinking. GRE, LSATs, and others. In terms of your taking the test also, though, how do you find that you feel in the room? How do you feel taking the test in person? Is it one that in the room you feel anxious about, whereas when you're at home now practicing or helping others tutor, you don't feel that at all?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel it. It's strange because it's been a few years now because I haven't taken one since before the pandemic. Yeah. And a couple of things have changed. My eyesight's worse, so I'm going to have reading glasses in there.
Okay.
And as you get older, you get slower, and time is certainly a part of it. And I haven't really sat down and done a full practice test. My practice is going to work every day and just tutoring kids over and over and over. But there's a sense of like security that maybe I shouldn't have, because I see the same questions and reading passages over and over and over.
Right.
And tomorrow, or the next time I take one of these tests, it could be something completely different. It will be something completely different.
Right?
And I just have to be ready to adjust quickly.
Are you better at the language section or the math section when it comes to this test? And have you always been? When you were taking this test in high school, which sections were you stronger in?
I think I'm better in the math section now, but it's really close. If you asked me this question any time before I was like 25, math without a doubt was better.
Okay.
My reading was terrible.
Really?
Like really bad.
Wow.
Yeah. So and often people are like, well, why are you well, then don't tell people that. I go, no. I want people to know that I took this test when I was like 12 for a gifted program because I was good at math. I got a 250 on my verbal.
Wow.
A 250. And people are like, don't tell anyone. I go, no, because I've gotten an 800 now.
And you're
so it's
better.
nice. So it shows that somebody can improve by 550 points. Yeah, it took me 4 decades, but I can speed up that process.
There you go. Yeah. And that's what we want. We want the process sped up for those who are getting help.
And I tell people it's not because I read more now. It's because I realize how, and by the time I got to high school, still in the like low to mid 500s in the reading section and vocabulary. It was verbal back then. But I tell people the reason my score has gone up isn't because I read more, but it's because I realized I was doing it wrong.
What's the top score one can get now?
800 in math and 800 in combination reading, writing.
And where's the essay section that once was part of the test? It's optional. It's not even part of it anymore.
It's not part of it anymore.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if it is, it's being phased out and nobody's required to take it. If you signed up for it and paid for it, I think you can still take it, but there's really no benefit at all.
Yeah. In terms of contextualizing this test, how would you describe its value as far as getting young people thinking about the larger goal of getting to college? Is this something that that is on the radar of families who are trying to get their kids to think about college? And should it be? Talk a little bit, if you would, about parenting college-bound kids, because for me, that's what it seems like this test should be about if we're looking at it as a positive tool and something in the academic space that's positive.
Yeah, I think one of the main differences now versus 10 years ago, 20 years ago is it's so competitive now. And a great SAT score is not a guarantee for anything. I've had kids get 1600s who got into like 1 out of 8 schools.
All right.
With great grades too.
Wow.
Because the difference to an admissions officer between a kid getting a 1600 and somebody getting a 1540 is not that big a deal. But getting a really good score can at least open up the door to a whole different range of schools, a different like tier of schools. Plus, a lot of places are optional now. So I advise parents sometimes, is it really worth trying to get this score up 50, 60 points? If your kid has great grades, maybe just look at the test optional schools or consider that route instead.
About how many times do you recommend a kid take the SAT?
It could vary, but I would say don't plan on just taking it once. 2 or 3 is completely normal. 4 is even fine. I mean, you can take it as many times as you want. It's not necessarily going to hurt you, but at some point an admissions officer is going to be like, what's going on here? Why is this person taking it over and over and not improving? But if you're showing improvement from one to the next, you can certainly, write about that in your essays and say, look, I know I can get better. And I would, sell it as part of my application that, I improved.
Absolutely. Now, you've got kids yourself. Tell me their names again and their ages, and then tell me a bit about your ways of getting them thinking about being college bound.
All right. Well, Arthur is 8. And he's the oldest.
All right.
Shant is 6. They're all boys, by the way, because these are Armenian names. So
there we go.
It might not be clear other than Arthur. Arthur is 8. Shant is 6. Rafi is 3. Kevork is 1.
4 boys.
Yes.
And they're all awesomely prepared to take tests. I know that your oldest, when he was 3, was on television reciting the capitals that he knew, and you were there supporting him.
Yep.
We've got a clip of that.
What's the capital of Brazil?
Brasilia.
What's the capital of Peru?
Lima.
What's the capital of Ecuador?
Quito.
In your raising of your sons, how are you and your wife thinking about instilling this value, instilling this ambition in your sons? Hey, college is available to you and a good option.
Sure. Well, I mean, Kevork is dead set on Ivy League. No, he's the 1-year-old.
All right, the 1-year-old.
But it hasn't really gone to that level yet, but they certainly ask questions about it, and they know what I do for a living, and they hear us talk about it a lot. Right. We let them know that, how you do in school matters. And how your work is presented matters. So a lot of that is really what we try to instill in them.
That's powerful.
Like they're not taking, but they do, take the Terra Novas, for instance. But only Arthur has done that so far, and he did really well. But we let him know that, you can do better on it, but this is just a test, and it's not anything you're really prepared for. It's a chance to see what you're good at and what you could get better at.
Now, thinking about your own childhood, what made you good at taking tests? Was it you've always been inclined to play quiz type games? You've always been someone who will take on a paper test challenge or a crossword puzzle? What is it about your growing up that made you interested in test taking and probably inclined to do well on them?
It's interesting because I am competitive and was competitive and love that kind of thing. But again, it was just the math for the SAT.
Okay.
Like if I really was more competitive, I could have found a way, because I didn't have a tutor and I didn't do test prep, which is strange because thinking back, my older sister did. And maybe I could have used it, but maybe my parents were like, oh, he's so good at math, that's what he'll do.
And she didn't become your tutor?
No, maybe she should have in the verbal side. But I realize now, like, why did I not prepare more? Or I prepared in a very poor way. Just learning lists of vocabulary words, which at most could change my score by like 30. When what I really needed to do was like, hear the kind of stuff that I tell kids now. And I'm always like, if I could tell my teenage self, do this instead, I know I could have picked up at least 100 more points.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of going a step further and taking some of the skills you've acquired as a test prep tutor and someone who studied the test and applying that in other spaces of your life, you've been on a couple of game shows.
Yes.
Has the experience of being a tutor helped you with that, or not so much? There's something else that made you either want to go on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, or actually take the step to do it?
I don't know if it's necessarily helped me, but I think just knowing how to answer questions, possibly how to reason through something, certainly ruling out in a multiple choice setting, which is what Who Wants to Be a Millionaire is.
Yeah.
You can often sort of realize, well, that answer probably
is not the
wouldn't
one.
make sense at this level of a question, because the SAT math section goes easy to hard.
Okay.
And I often tell kids, look, if you're on the very first question and you're really just racking your brains on it, you've probably overthought it.
Okay.
But if it's question number 30 out of 30 and you're like, don't insult me, this is easy, probably not.
Right.
So that sort of thing would come into play, I think, in a game like Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
Okay.
For sure.
The other game show that we've got a clip of involves you naming lyrics from different songs.
And Martin, you're going to be starting us off. Where do you want to go first?
I'll start with Rock Rhymes, Paul Simon.
If you see my boxy car, I can be your lawn's last gal. Jessica.
If you see my bodyguard, you can call me Al.
No. Martin.
If you'll be my bodyguard, I will be your long-lost pal.
No. Go ahead, Steve.
If you be my bodyguard, I can be your long-lost pal.
That's correct.
Tell me a little bit about what you love musically and how you were successful on that show. It seemed like a number of the songs were 80s songs.
Yeah,
So it
definitely.
seemed like you had an edge.
Definitely new 80s stuff. It's a lot of like the MTV era. The show aired on VH1. But the thing is, I didn't have MTV growing up.
No.
But I think I just have a good musical ear and just knew it from the radio, or I'd watch MTV at certain places and in college. But I did study for that show, I remember. I only had like a couple days between finding out I was going to be on the show and airing.
Okay.
So I remember knowing, I lived in Japan for a few years.
Uh-huh.
So I was very worried that I had a gaping hole
gap.
of knowledge from like 1997 to 1999. And the internet was pretty primitive back then.
Right.
But I remember like doing searches for, what were the number one songs these years. And one of them came up on the show. And I don't get that question right, I don't win the car.
Wow.
So, I remember being very gratified that I put in the time to
You won
to
a
study.
car, you won $50,000. You have won some things.
Yeah.
And I applaud you.
Thank you.
Maybe that's the next kind of coaching you should get into. How to coach folks into
How to get on.
success.
Yeah.
And how to get on those shows.
I'm always looking.
What can you share with us about the experiences in school that you think students are having related to getting prepared for the SAT now as compared to when you were at Lower Merion? That's the high school
That's
you
where I
went to,
went, yeah.
right?
That's right.
And so when you look back then and think about, well, the number of times teachers encouraged you to think about the SAT, or the conversation amongst your peers was, I've got to get ready for the test. What comes to mind in terms of memories then, and what are you hearing students say to you today, their peers' conversation is like?
It's very different, I think. I don't remember ever like hearing about it in class, or it was rare. And we didn't learn anything that was going to be on the SAT. Even the math, if you think about it, is mostly grade school arithmetic, some algebra, some geometry. But if you're taking trigonometry and calculus, there's no calculus. There's very little trigonometry. There's a writing section now, which is all about punctuation and grammar and sentence structure. And we weren't learning that in high school. That's
Right.
stuff we learned in grade school.
Exactly.
But these days, I ask kids, "Are you learning this stuff in school?" Some are, and some aren't. And I go, "Well, the ones who are the
Have an
ones who will do
advantage.
very well in that part of the test."
The tip that I've heard some people give is have a study group. Find a group of young people to study with in addition to getting a coach like you. What do you think about that? Is it important for young people to study with one another, or is it simply the case that you need a coach who knows the test?
I don't know. I don't know too many people who like group up to study for the SAT. Or every now and then I'll get like a small group of kids. But as far as like doing it on their own, other than holding each other accountable,
In what way?
in the sense of, all right, the three of you, let's say I have a group of 3 kids. I'm going to tutor all 3 of you on Wednesday at 9 o'clock. Make sure you've done all the work, because if you haven't, now the other 2 kids are kind of being held back because you haven't kept up. So there's some pressure there for, on the kids. And I let the parents know, here's how we're going to do it if we're going to form a group.
And what do you want to share about what it's like when someone does come work with you? And honestly, I'm asking this question because I'm hoping anyone watching the show asks themselves, well, what should I look for in a tutor so that I know I'm getting my money's worth or getting something valuable out of the experience? When someone comes to you, what's the experience like? How long might they come? How long might they stay? How frequently might they come? And what's the experience like?
Yeah, and it varies so much. I mean, I'll have people who will do like twice a week for months. I have people who are in 9th grade who start now. And it's not cheap. So I let people know, like, you want a budget because they're not taking the test for 2 years. So you don't necessarily need to do twice a week as a 9th grader. You can even start like once every couple months. Enroll in like a seminar, because I'll do like these 6-hour seminars on the weekend, 3 hours Saturday, 3 hours Sunday. At least that forms a good base of
Foundation.
content, and strategy. But during the sessions, it could be anything. It depends on what a student does in between our sessions.
Okay.
If a student's taking practice tests, and that student should take practice tests, they'll know what their weaknesses are, and we can drill those. Or if they haven't had the time, we can do a quick speed drill during our session, at which point I can observe them managing their time, which can be very, very uncomfortable for me and for the student when I see they're not applying the time management that I tell them to.
You're making me think of the coaches of a cross-country team who are standing there with the clock, looking at someone run around the track, but seeming not to give their all as they're being watched. That experience of being watched can be the thing that raises the anxiety. Are you finding that in conversations with students, there are certain things related to time management that will slow a student down, that will raise the anxiety, and do you give them tips for help for working with that?
I'll see, and especially when I'm observing them in person, because a lot of what I do is online now. But if I in person, and it especially applies to math questions, if I see a student just not moving on from a question, like you don't have the luxury of 4 to 5 minutes on a question. Decide pretty early. All right, I'm moving on, because that question is worth just as many points as any other question on the test. So why are you wasting 5 minutes of your 25 minutes on this one question when during that time you probably could get 3 or 4 more right after that?
That's great advice. You went to the University of Virginia, which is an awesome school.
It sure is.
I know, because
you should check it out sometime.
I went there too, and both of our sisters preceded us at the University of Virginia. Where were you thinking about going to college when you were in high school, making your choices, and why'd you decide to go to the University of Virginia?
It's strange because I look back at that versus what it's like today, and it's amazing I ended up at UVA. Because my SATs were good, but not amazing. It was all math again.
Okay.
My grades weren't great either. I mean, it's strange how I got in, and I was out of state. So all these things together made it seem like I almost didn't apply. I was like, why am I even applying? But I did. Thank God I did. I got waitlisted, and then kept my name on the waitlist, and I got in somehow. I was going to go to Delaware. Was my backup, which is a good school, but it's different. It's different. It's a different level.
Yep.
Sorry to the Blue Huns out there, and I was ready to go there. But all the other schools I applied to, they were all safety schools. I knew I was going to get into Delaware, St. Joe's, or Sinus, Drexel. I didn't apply anywhere that was a reach except for UVA, which looking back was really not a good strategy. Economics. But I was an engineer for 1 year, and that was
going to ask
showed me how unprepared I was for.
So once you got in, what did you get from going to college that you expected to get, and what did you get that were bonus things that you didn't expect or didn't realize was going to be that valuable? Because I was saying to you earlier, I want to encourage young people to go to college. So what'd you get?
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. But I look back, and I've got nothing but positive memories about the UVA, but I look back and realize how much I wasted there. In terms of opportunities that were available to me. It was just, let me find the easy way out, or let me do this, let me do that.
In terms of networking,
in terms of
participation in clubs,
maybe not taking a foreign language, for instance, because I didn't have to. But I love languages. I grew up bilingually.
So you speak Armenian.
Yeah, and I speak decent French from high school. Learned some Japanese when I was there, and now I look back and go, I could have taken a language. Why not? Because I wanted to take some other class that I heard was easy. I look back and I wish I had better guidance on what to do there and how to manage my time. But a benefit that I didn't expect, I guess, just as an adult, how tied into the school I am. And just a lot of my clients are just friends' kids. And I'm always like, God, do they remember what I was like back then? But I guess they, see that, I've
we
built
all
up.
grow up.
Exactly, yeah. And they hear, and they all talk, so. In
terms of the experiences that you had with fun at UVA, I know, because I know you've got a great sense of humor, and you've even taken that into actual comedy clubs. So tell me a little bit about yourself as a person who uses music and humor, who uses humor in and of itself, and where does that come from?
Sure. That's another regret. People who knew me at UVA are like, when did you learn how to play the piano? I go, when I was 4. They go, well, why didn't you
We
play at
didn't
school?
know.
Because I was too busy doing other things. But yeah, it's something that as I got older, I realized, and I play by ear. I took lessons, but I play by ear, that it was something that I could do, semi-professionally and have fun doing it. And I've always, thought of myself as funny. So whether that's true or not. So I did some comedy even back at UVA. Like they would have like the stand-up competitions.
And you
eventually I just finally got into it and got on stage here, in my like late 20s, early 30s.
And then Andy Reid became the Eagles
And that
coach.
certainly helped. Yeah. So
how did that
somewhere
help?
along the
Tell the
way,
people about this.
I just became the Andy Reid impersonator. It just sort of happened organically through some contest where you had to do something original. And
what did you do?
I dressed up like Andy Reid and yelled out Foreman Mills, who was sponsoring it. And they eventually found it very interesting. They had me entertain 4 games, do some commercials for them. They sent me to the Super Bowl. It was incredible. The bad one, the Jacksonville Super Bowl against the Patriots.
Still.
Yeah, but it was great. Yeah, it was amazing.
Absolutely.
And I met tons of Eagles.
Okay.
Met lots of media people. And the thing is some of them have become clients? Just through they never knew, because back then I wasn't doing the tutoring, and we've stayed in touch.
Now, when you're playing the piano as Andy Reid, are you singing songs that he might sing? Describe that impersonation.
Sometimes. There's a local band, Mr. Green Jeans, that plays all around the area, down the shore, and they used to play before the Eagles games.
Okay.
And somehow I just sort of struck up a conversation with them. We became friends, and every game I would get up there and should I stay or should I go by the class? Like once in the middle of the song, it was just, should I run or should I throw?
Okay.
And of course, with Andy Reid, it was throw.
It was throw.
He doesn't run the ball.
You got to do it. How do you bring what you know that isn't about practicing reading the questions to bear on the test to help you take it successfully? Is it laughing about things that are difficult to understand? How is it that you approach that anxiety reduction
Possibly.
part?
I'll let kids know. There's a strategy I often give kids, and it's find out what you're good at and what you're not good at, especially on the reading. And there are only certain types of passages. There's a fictional passage, a social science passage, a couple of science passages, and then there's what I call the old passage, which could be from the 1800s. And it could be British. And most people don't want to read that. So I'll let them know, save that for last.
Right.
But I'll also let them know when you finally get to it, it's not like the questions are written in Old English. They're not going to ask. They're not going to ask ye what ye think.
Right.
But I let them know. I try to let them know that's boring. And it's okay that if you find it boring. But if you like it, for some reason, don't make that your last one. So everyone is a little bit different, and I try to let them know that if you are not good at something, we can figure out a way to turn that to your advantage.
So besides March 12th, how many other times will you take the test this year, or when will you take it again?
Probably next year again.
Okay.
But I'll try to take an ACT this year also, which is harder for me.
Yeah?
Because it's so fast.
Okay.
And as I get older, I get slower, and that one is the real anxiety test. Yeah.
What's next in terms of making this transition from this pandemic tutoring moment to whatever things are going to look like this summer? Are you going back fully in person? Are you going to continue to have some folks online? What's next for you?
So it's a mix. And one thing about the pandemic that was a blessing is the scope of my clientele became more national. So it had to be online, because if I'm tutoring kids in California, we're going to do it online. But a lot of people still like the in-person, and I do too. I get crazy just cooped up in my basement tutoring. Yeah. So it's nice to get out there. And what else is next? I definitely want to get bigger and figure out a way to grow the business without it involving me working more hours, because my hours are so not traditional that I'm working nights and weekends, and then guess what? That's the time my kids are at home. So we're always trying to figure out a way to do that.
We all want to work smarter and not harder.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I appreciate you coming on the show, Steve, very much. And I think these are going to be tips that people find very worthwhile. Everyone, support your students who are taking the SAT. Help them manage their time, their stress. Find them a good support system. Pay tutors if you can afford that and need that. Look for the fee waivers for tests. Do what you've got to do, and don't duck before anybody actually starts punching. Don't say you can't do it. go give it a shot. It is something that's worthwhile. I appreciate that you have tuned in again to Men on the Main Line. This is Elbra Jones saying thank you, and I will see you next time.